I wanted to start with a clip that we were talking about just a little bit earlier from our political editor Beth Rigby's interview with Keir Starmer yesterday, where he said he was willing to fight fire with fire when it came to using various different types of election tactics in the year ahead, in the election campaign ahead. It followed a long speech where he was talking about cleaning up politics and taking the higher ground. So that didn't last very long.
Well, I think the point he's making is that we expect to be on the receiving end of negative attacks, of a dirty campaign, because, frankly, that's all the Conservatives have left. They've got no positive vision for the future of the country because they're defending 14 years of national decline. They'll be defending 14 years where working people have not only been hammered with mortgage rises because of decisions they took with the economy to play fast and loose with the public finances, but also because people are on average paying £1,200 more in tax because of the 25 Tory tax rises. And what have people got to show for these huge tax rises? Precious little. The NHS, as you know, is on its knees with record waiting lists. Our schools are failing with roofs collapsing. We're not dealing with crime in a sufficient way. And the point he is making is that we know the Conservatives will therefore run a very dirty negative campaign, but we'll offer a positive campaign. We're going to be focusing on how we're going to grow the economy and how we're going to help young people get on the housing ladder by building more houses, and how those young people, if they want to start a family, their children will go to school and access breakfast clubs in every primary school. And if, God forbid, people get ill, the NHS will have 2 million more appointments. We'll have faster cancer diagnosis and better mental health provision, because we all know that so many young people are denied mental health provision under the Conservatives. So that's the point that Keir Starmer was making, that the Conservatives have nothing to offer, whereas Labour have are offering a future of hope for people.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if that really plays out and negative tactics are avoided in the year ahead. Let's hope they are for a brighter tone of debate. Let's touch on where you are in Wellingborough. I mean, are we at the point now where by-elections are a bit of a distraction for you, and that there's a risk of underwhelming because they have obviously gone quite well for you over the last 12 months?
Well, it is. As you've pointed out, I'm stood here in Wellingborough because we've got a by-election here because of wrongdoing by a former Conservative Member of Parliament. I mean, we've sort of lost count of the numbers of by-elections we've had because of that, and there's a possibility of another one apparently or suggested down the line as well. And I think that's why, in the end, people do want a change of direction. You know, yesterday Rishi Sunak said he's now thinking of the general election later in the year. And a lot of people, I think, listened to that and they just thought, what is he on the run from? What is he hiding away from? Because after 14 years now, 14 years of decline, 14 years of the NHS not working, of people's living standards being squeezed, I think there is a yearning for change across the country. I think people do want a new approach. And I think people do want to turn the page on this Conservative government. So, look, we'll fight really hard in this by-election, and we'll fight really hard in any other by-election that comes along. But in the end, I think the British people want change, and they want a general election.
Let's talk about change then. And again, referring back to the long speech by your party leader yesterday, if you look at the tone of the questions, there were 13 or 14, I think, that followed from journalists. Most of them, and this is reflected in some of the front pages today, were about a lack of hard and clear policies that differ from the Conservatives. I mean, if we touch on the economy, for example, I get the point that the tax burden's already quite high and there's not huge headroom to make changes. But is it a concerted effort to try and be quite close to the Conservatives, given that you're ahead in the polls on areas like that?
No. And if you don't mind me saying so, I hope you don't think I'm being discourteous. I don't accept the framing or the premise of that question, and I'll tell you why. We've put forward an economic plan to grow the economy and raise living standards. It begins with delivering economic stability and never playing fast and loose with the public finances, because we know what happens when governments play fast and loose, when governments are irresponsible. It leads to working people paying more on their mortgage and more in tax. But we've also said we want to build more houses. We're going to radically reform the planning rules for 1.5 million more houses so young people can get on the housing ladder. We say we want to deliver breakfast clubs in every primary school to help children start the school day with food in their tummies, but also to help parents who want to return to work because it will help with childcare. We want to rebuild our National Health Service, deliver more appointments and more procedures in our health service, deliver more appointments in dentistry, use cutting-edge technology to speed up cancer diagnosis. We've got one of the worst cancer survival records in Western Europe. And the reason for that is because we don't diagnose cancers quickly enough. So we've got detailed plans across the board, a detailed programme for government, which we think we can deliver. And in contrast, what will you get with 5 more years of the Conservatives? You'll get more decline. So I do think we have the policies, and I do think you'll see, whenever that general election comes, a manifesto setting out missions to change this country.
Well, I accept the point that the manifesto will add most of the detail, and we're not at that point yet. But equally, I'm sure you'll accept that a lot of what you just listed are goals, not hard policies. I mean, growing the economy, building more houses, feeding more children and reducing cancer deaths, these are goals that everybody shares. I mean, that's not Labour specific. Maybe you will deliver them better than the current government. But until we see the specifics of the policies, it's harder for people to choose from. Just specifically on tax, I know it's an area you look at quite closely. The tax burden is estimated to hit 37% this year. It's the highest since the 1950s. It's risen about 4% over the course of this particular parliament. Is that too high, and should it come down?
Yeah. I mean, the tax burden is too high on working people. We have had 25 Tory tax rises, and as you rightly say, this is the biggest tax-raising parliament in history, so it is too high. But it just loops back to a question that we were talking about a little bit earlier in the discussion, which is you cannot play fast and loose with the public finances. You cannot be irresponsible with the public finances. So every commitment that we make will be costed and funded. We're not going to make uncosted taxation commitments. We want to grow the economy, we want to improve living standards, and we do have detailed plans to how we're going to reform the planning system, how we're going to work with industry and business with our industrial council. We do have detailed plans on the National Health Service. We're going to make a tax change to one of the loopholes which impacts on non-DOMs. We think we can get money from closing that loophole down, which we can put that money into the National Health Service to deliver 2 million more appointments, more dentistry appointments, and deliver modern cutting-edge equipment to do cancer diagnosis much quicker. They're not goals, they're detailed plans. So we think we have got a programme for government, but on the point about the tax burden, yes, it is too high, but your priority has to be growing the economy to raise living standards.
John Ashworth, thanks so much for joining us this morning.